And welcome to the March horoscope, so the monthly horoscope. I apologize that the quality is so crap. I started filming this, got halfway through and then realized I wasn't actually filming. So I need to be able to look at myself to know that I'm filming, but the quality is not as good on the front camera. So this is going to be the monthly horoscope. I'm going to go through the key transits for this month and talk about how they affect us all. But also I will not be talking about how this affects your rising sign, your zodiac sign in detail at all. And that's because I do weekly horoscopes where I really go in depth, and sometimes they're an hour long with me talking about detail. I don't want to keep repeating myself. And honestly, when I sat down to do this, because I've done this already and forgot that I was filming, of course, I realized it was going to be too long. I simply don't have the time. So I do apologize that I'm not going to be talking about the zodiac signs, but it's still important to know how these transits are going to affect you, just generally, how you can use them. And also I will say at the end of each transit, this affects certain zodiac signs more. I'll do a rundown of the main characters for this month as well. So March the 2nd, Mars enters Pisces. So we can see that Mars here that was in Aquarius now moves to Pisces. So we have the Sun, the North Node, Mercury now retrograde, and Venus in Pisces. So Mars in Pisces is considered to be peregrine or neutral, a bit like Mars in Virgo. It's neither good nor bad, it just simply is. So of course Mars rules Scorpio and Aries, and this is very passionate. It's about courage and bravery. It's our motivation and physical body. So Mars in Pisces can be very passive aggressive in a way, because Mars wants to be, courageous and go for it, and Pisces sometimes needs to sit back. It's funny because you would consider Mars and Pisces to be quite weak, because Pisces is quite slow, it's quite foggy and dreamy, and Mars just wants to move forward. So for example, Mars in Cancer would be in its fall. So why is Mars in Pisces not? Well, there's more strengths to Mars in Pisces. So action is driven by emotion and intuition. So when motivation is quite inconsistent, there is a flow to how things go. So say that I don't necessarily know what I'm going to do, I can sit back and listen to my intuition like Pisces does, because I'm a Pisces moon, so this is going to hit my moon as well. And it flows like the fish, right? Like Pisces. So there is a sense of I'm going to use a bit of emotion and intuition rather than being rigid and only using logic, which actually puts me at a disservice. There is an avoidance of conflict here. It's quite passive aggressive. So sometimes it doesn't want to engage in confrontation because it's not emotionally strong enough for that. It wants to stay away from negativity and be delusional and positive. But so that can be a bit passive aggressive, or seeing like making a snarky, sarcastic comment. But at the same time, there is a lot of strategy to this particular transit, because Pisces wants to find the path of least resistance and not go full hog confrontation. So that means it can assess and understand its environment more. Pisces is a mutable sign, which means it has great adaptability. So this transit is very adaptable, good for the workplace and good for romance in that regard. However, because it wants to adapt so much, it can get very overwhelmed by the heavy issues that Mars would normally be very courageous and brave about. So there is a lack of direction here, and sometimes we're trying to seek clarity. I mean, we know with all this Pisces energy right now, where's the clarity, that can be really irritating. So this particular transit, again, neither good, not really bad either. It just simply is. I think it can be really good for romance, and that is very sensitive. And, I think it can be quite, obsessive and passionate in Pisces. In work, there's creativity and flexibility and adaptability. And I think for certain houses, like the 4th house, for example, that can be good because it gives you the understanding of, I don't want to go for this offer in this house, I want to go for this one. I can assess different opportunities in front of me. So this particular transit is going to affect Pisces, Virgo, Sagittarius, Gemini, Scorpio, and Aries the most. March the 3rd, we have a full moon, a Virgo lunar eclipse. A total lunar eclipse is actually a blood moon as well. And this is going to be a real end of a chapter. So we do have another eclipse in 2027 in Virgo, penumbral eclipse, but in my eyes I feel like this finishes up the story. There's like a theme that we've been having for the past couple of years, and I'm like, nah, this feels like it's finishing a story for me. So this is actually taking place at 12 degrees, which is the second decan of Virgo. That is ruled by Venus and Saturn, which is a Capricorn triplicity. That also makes me think of like when you put in the hard work, you're rewarded, which is a very Saturnian theme. And obviously Virgo is ruled by Mercury, but having Venus and Saturn as like like supervisors, as like co-rulers together, adds a shade of that. The tarot card associated with that deck is actually the Nine of Pentacles, which is very successful. I actually like that card a lot. It has strategic advantage. It's quite positive, and it really helps you to understand that when you work hard, that it pays off, that you get prosperity. Again, Pentacles energy, that is also always about money. And karmically, it tells you that you don't have to fear success. Sometimes we have the little thing on the hand and it's like, I don't want to take it because if I take it, it feels like it's too good to be true. So there is an element of, okay, I'm releasing something here. It feels like it's too good to be true. In this regard, I think releasing the need to always be working and doing things and not actually enjoying life is really important. There is a need to, get rid of physical and emotional clutter and to also reorganize your habits with this eclipse. So I don't think this eclipse is as nasty as the Aquarius eclipse by any means. There's not really that major deceptive energy. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about the exact aspects of this moon because I'm going to talk about it in a separate video, but what I will say is it's definitely not as nasty as the eclipse in Aquarius. And actually what I would say is when you're presented with a gift, when you're presented with something that the universe wants to wrap up for you, accept it. Say yes, okay, time for me to take my bow, it's my swan song, I need to move on, and this is actually a good thing for me. So of course this eclipse is going to affect Virgo, Pisces, Gemini and Sagittarius, particularly from 10 to 19 degrees. If you have something like a Virgo moon at 29 degrees, probably not going to be close enough, so you definitely need to look at your birth chart for the degrees of that. I think it would also affect Cancer risings as well, because in my opinion Cancer risings are always slightly more affected by eclipses and full moons. Okay, March the 6th, Venus moves from Pisces, where it's exalted, into Aries, where it's considered to be in its detriment. So that doesn't mean it's the worst thing in the world, but it's not a great place for Venus to be, because of course Venus rules Libra and Taurus and Mars rules Aries. So this feels like men are from Mars, men are from Venus, they don't get each other, just like Mars and Libra just wouldn't work either. So it is very sort of spring fling, there's a flirtation to it, there's a hotness. The problem is Aries is far too hot for Venus, so these two can be very reckless. There's a lot of confidence and boldness to it, a lot of conviction, but I think it's far too impulsive. It makes very reckless decisions. So this is where our communication with love, money and luxury is more bold, it's more direct, there is a lot of passion, but because it is impatient, it is quite selfish, it's unapologetic about pursuing its own pleasure, which of course can cause hedonism and, the understanding that I don't really care if I trample you, I just want to get my pleasure and balance my desires. Don't care about you. So the energy is very direct. We're in the getaway car, we're going, okay, it's fast, it's very expressive, it's quite good for creativity in a way because it's very courageous. Again, it wants to put its own needs ahead of others. I think it can be quite compassionate in certain houses. So in the 6th house, actually I've seen this in personal charts where it's very giving, lots of acts of service, lots of, I'm going to make you a cup of tea and make sure that everything is lovely for you. So don't get me wrong, it doesn't have to be the most selfish transit, but just generally it's quite independent, and it moves from one thing to the next because it's so impatient. So it's not really one of those committed type of signs for Venus to be in. Whereas like Venus and Capricorn is like, I'm locked in and I'm quite picky about who I want to be with. Financially, this gives you a confident approach to managing your finances, and in work there is a sense of really, I'm going for it, I'm going to be really motivated. And again, with Mars being in Pisces, there's an impulsive nature to this, but it's about knowing when to sit back and say this avenue is better than this avenue. I think with Mercury being retrograde in Pisces as well, we need to understand that impulsivity with communication can cause problems, because once you say things, you can't unsay them. So you can take action with this transit, but I would also say don't be too direct. This particular transit will affect Aries, Libra, Capricorn, Cancer, and also Taurus. March the 10th, Jupiter goes direct in Cancer, so we're not retrograde anymore. This is going to bring so much more abundance and luck now that we're moving forward and we're not sort of moonwalking backwards. Of course, Jupiter is the planet of expansion and abundance and wisdom, and I think there's a kind of tested idea in my mind about what Jupiter's actually bringing in Cancer, because it's certainly not bringing a lot of luck to Cancers, that's for sure, and it's certainly not giving love to Capricorns. So I'm intrigued about what this Jupiter transit's doing. It seems to be quite different than other ones. There's a lot of different factors at play, but I'm like putting an open question out to other astrologers that might watch this is like, do we what's going on with Jupiter in Cancer? I think when it's been retrograde, it's actually brought a lot of constriction to Virgo and Libra risings when it comes to career. I've had so many personal readings with Virgos. They've been like, I've been great success with career, and then as soon as I hit the retrograde period, it just dried up. And I'm like, yeah, I think there can be some real slow delay with Jupiter retrograding, particularly in Cancer as well. So this will give us more speed and more luck going forward. I'd also say this does affect Cancers, Capricorns, Aries, Libra, Sagittarius and Pisces. March 18th, we have a new moon in Pisces, and this is taking place at 28 degrees, and that's the third decan, which is ruled by Mars. So even though Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune, this is a co-ruler of Mars, and of course Mars is now in Pisces, so that kind of fits. I always like a Pisces new moon because I'm a Pisces moon, but it feels like manifestation, like we can dream about something new. It's like really the start of spring, and it gives us the feeling of so many possibilities in the world, so many things that we can dream about. And there's a lot of colourful energy to this particular decan. You know, it's the 10 of Cups, which is like the happy home, like that's the best conclusion. So weirdly, even though it's a new moon, there is a lot of conclusive energy to this where we're dreaming of the end goal. So with this new moon, when you manifest, don't think about the next step, think about the end goal, the happy home, the vision at the end where, you know, you're with your guy or girl and there's kids and there's a dog and there's whatever, or you're in the big city doing all these things. Like, think about the end goal, because that's what the 10 of Cups is dealing with. It's very much Cinderella getting the prince after a kind of long stint, and also saying that I'm emotionally fulfilled, I want to settle down, I want to find the love that I've been searching for, and actually that I want to be more creative as well. I want to be more homely and warm and cozy and just gezellig, you know? So I think this is a really lovely new moon for that. This will, of course, affect Pisces, Virgo, Sagittarius and Gemini, anything from 20 to 29 degrees. So if you have, say, a Pisces moon, but it's at 1 degree, it might not really affect you as much. Same for like a Virgo at 3 degrees, like you're a bit too far off, to be honest. But also I'd say that Cancer risings are affected by the moon. I always gonna say Cancer risings. Some aren't affected by it as much, but some are. So I think it's always important just to mention it, because I don't want to say you would definitely not be affected by it as a Cancer rising, because I've seen too many readings and charts and people that I've spoken to who have been affected by it. But generally this will be more focused on the mutable signs. March 20th is like the official new year, because the sun enters Aries, which is the spring equinox and the start of the astrological year. So this basically is like Happy New Year for people who are going to celebrate it and say that January is never going to be the new year. It's always going to be March. So this brings that, you know, oh, the flowers are coming out. We've had this new moon in Pisces where we can dream big and it's really beautiful and we're excited about things, we're passionate. And, you know, there is some janky energy in the sky, you know, Venus being in Aries and also, you know, Mercury retrograding. But I think we've got to take it where it is. And I think this is really lovely for saying, this is the start of the new year. I'm going to plan. I've used the new moon in Pisces to plan and we're going full speed ahead. What's also really lovely is that on the same day, Mercury goes direct in Pisces. So actually it's like, okay, we can start dreaming and communicating. Of course, there is a post-shadow period for about a week or so afterwards. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to sign a contract smack bang on the day. But things will get a lot easier with communication. And yeah, I think that's a lot nicer for us. March 29th, Juno, which is this asteroid of commitment and marriage, not actually a planet, is entering Aquarius. So it's actually been in Capricorn for quite some time, and sometimes it bounces from signs and then goes in and out, and often spends a lot of time in one sign. But actually now we're in Aquarius, which is quite new. So because it's an asteroid of marriage, that's going to embrace the unconventional partnerships. Remember that Aquarius, although ruled by Uranus in modern astrology, is still ruled by Saturn. So there is still loyalty and a rigid nature to it, but Uranus can add a little bit more of like, you know what, maybe I'm going to have an open mind and get out my comfort zone. I always tell people who have strong Aquarius placements that you might have a certain type, but that you must be open-minded, because that Uranus element is trying to say, maybe I want to, like, you know, jump out the box a little bit. Really good time to explore different types of relationships and people, to connect with different communities, people who have different values and understandings and angles and perspectives in life, and also being a little bit more caring with this particular asteroid as well. Then the next day, March 30th, we have Venus entering Taurus. So we had Venus, which was in Aries, in its detriment, going into Taurus, which is domicile. So this is at home. So we've gone from exaltation to detriment to home. So that's quite nice. Venus in Taurus is lovely, obviously very, very luxurious, very romantic. This really brings the vibes of, oh, you know, you're going to cook me a nice meal at home, you know, open that bottle of wine that's been aged for a while, you know, it's just very luxurious. And it's very powerful as well. So in love and relationships, it's quite practical. There's a stability, sometimes a bit of stubbornness to it, but I don't think it's like, I'm really going to be stubborn. Financially, it's great because, of course, Taurus is the second house of finances and income. So that boosts financial intelligence. Maybe that's the word, financial literacy is probably the better word, and encourages you to improve your financial literacy with assets and investments. But also it's a strong push towards sensuality, pleasure, doing things that you enjoy, you know. And now Mercury's direct in Pisces, we can say things that are a little bit more you know, compassionate, and say Venus and Taurus is here, a lot of passionate energy. The sun being in Aries, I think it's quite nice. So actually towards the end of March, much more romantic, harmonious, and there is a nice determined approach to our goals as well. So that was the wrap up of the key transits happening in March. The main characters, in my opinion, for March are Pisces, because of Mars being in Pisces, the new moon, and also the fact that we have a Virgo eclipse in the 7th house. Virgo, of course, Mars in the 7th house, new moon in the 7th house, and eclipse in the 1st house. Gemini and Sagittarius because of the mutable energy from the eclipses, the new moon, and also Mars being in Pisces. Aries because Venus goes into the 1st house, making you very magnetic and attractive. And then, of course, the sun will be in Aries as well. And then I'd also just say Cancer, because Jupiter going direct and Venus being in the 10th house is really great for moving ahead with things. So you might feel like I can actually start pushing forward again.